Tonight, what the new GST credit top-up means for you. The Boost breakdown on the government's plan to tackle affordability.
Groceries are very expensive now, and it's really difficult to feed myself sometimes.
We've got to do more than just hand out money.
Plus, what the Prime Minister is saying about a spring snap election as MPs return to work in Ottawa.
It's shocking, to be honest.
The astonishing aftermath of a record-setting winter storm.
I don't think I've ever recalled a storm that where the heaviest amount of snow was in Toronto.
Where it's headed next. And small gear, major impact.
We're seeing more tape being sold at a time, and we're seeing it more globally.
The Canadian business scoring big from a hit show.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
A rare show of unity from the Liberals and Conservatives today for the first parliamentary sitting of the new year. The opposition said it would support the government's plan to increase the GST credit to help Canadians with food costs. But the support comes with a condition. CTV's senior political correspondent Michael Couture on what the measure could mean for your family.
So we're acting today.
Choosing to be in a produce store instead of Parliament, Prime Minister Mark Carney announced new measures to tackle the affordability crisis. The Liberal government is renaming the GST credit the Canada Groceries and Essentials Benefit and raising it by 25% for 5 years. With an additional one-time payment this year, the average family of four will get nearly $2,000 in 2026 and $1,400 each of the following years. The measure is expected to help 12 million low-income Canadians.
On average, these payments make up for the higher level of food prices since the pandemic.
Carney also laid out a new national food security strategy to strengthen domestic food production and improve access to nutritious food. The Conservatives say the GST measures aren't new, but they'll support them.
The Prime Minister has revived a Trudeau-era rebate, which we'll let pass, that will barely cover a few trips to the grocery store.
The focus on pocketbook issues is a clear response to the number one concern of Canadians, according to this pollster.
That's going to be the battleground for the next federal election, and it's going to be the key way that Canadians judge both Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre.
With a campaign-style announcement today, it had some wondering if Canadians could be headed to the polls this spring.
Of course we're not. We're not. We're focused on results for Canadians.
The Conservatives say they'll back the GST boost as long as other spending isn't added on. The bill is expected to be tabled in the coming days. Omar.
All right, Mike, thank you. Joining us now from inside the foyer of the House of Commons is CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. Walk us through, Vassy, the Liberal political strategy of starting this first sitting of 2026 with an affordability announcement and what impact that has on the Conservative strategy.
Hey, Omar. Well, there's definitely a policy imperative here because people are certainly struggling at the grocery store, but you're absolutely right. There's also a political strategy being employed, and it's basically to kind of get at the opposition's narrative before they have a chance to do so. Yes, Mr. Carney is polling far ahead of his competitor in Mr. Poilievre, but his party, the Liberals, are neck and neck with the Conservatives, and a lot of that has to do with the Conservatives, the popularity of the Conservatives' messaging when it comes to affordability. So this was an effort strategically to blunt some of those attacks before they came the government's way. Whether it works is another question.
And as we heard in Mike's piece, we heard the Prime Minister today ruling out a spring snap election. But is there another timeline in play?
I think there's maybe another timeline, Omar, and perhaps the Prime Minister will not exactly follow through. He might change his mind. I think that the announcement today exemplifies the possibility of an election, right? It looked like a campaign announcement. It was aimed at politically blunting a narrative from the opposition. I think the possibility remains wide open that should things change, the Prime Minister's mind could as well, Omar.
All right, Vassy, thank you for this tonight. An apparent about-face from Ontario's Premier today who called the federal government's auto strategy, quote, great. A far different tone from what he called the deal the Prime Minister struck on electric vehicles in China, which, as CTV's Abigail Beeman reports, is still a topic of discussion between Canada and the U.S.
We're going to put on his tab.
Pizza topped with pleasantries.
Very productive meeting.
Yeah,
Productive.
very
It's all about Team Canada.
Yeah, all about Team Canada.
A sharp contrast from Ontario's premier calling the Prime Minister's Beijing deal terrible. It allows 49,000 EVs into Canada in exchange for lower canola tariffs.
Did you guys make up?
I never had a problem. And yeah, is there differences? Sure there is. But I can tell you one thing, we agree on 99% of the stuff.
The industry minister also meeting Doug Ford in Toronto.
We can't just have an auto strategy in a bubble in Ottawa. We need to work with the Premier, we need to work with everyone.
Promising a new auto task force.
I'm very confident as we sit down and we move forward, we're going to make sure that we'll protect the sector.
While in Ottawa, we got a response from the Prime Minister to one of several weekend swipes from Donald Trump. He relaunched his old insult for Justin Trudeau and called Mark Carney governor.
In this role, you get called a lot of things, a lot of time, and I'm not going to comment on every tweet or truth or comment from whoever. So I can handle it.
And the minister responsible for Canada-U.S. trade offered a rare glimpse into talks as CUSMA, the North American Free Trade Deal, is up for review this year.
I was reassured that Ambassador Greer understood very clearly what the agreement is and what it's not.
Saying he reinforced to U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer Canada is not pursuing a free trade deal with China.
What was reassuring is his clear desire to work with us and Mexico in terms of a review of CUSMA.
Dominic LeBlanc says he and Greer will be speaking again later this week and talked about meeting in the next few weeks. Omar?
All right, Abigail, thank you. Late word tonight that U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox News that Donald Trump and Mark Carney spoke today and that Carney, quote, aggressively walked back some of the remarks he made at Davos. The Prime Minister's office has not commented. In other news, former Liberal Cabinet Minister Kirsty Duncan has passed away following a years-long battle with cancer. Tributes poured in across the political spectrum. Justin Trudeau posted he was heartbroken by the loss, saying he was lucky to call her a friend. Ontario Premier Doug Ford shared this story.
She's been a friend of the family's from the day she got elected. She's just a wonderful, wonderful person. People don't know this, but our family had a rule. We'd never run against Kirsty.
Duncan took a medical leave in 2023, but stayed on as MP. Kirsty Duncan was 59. Petition drives for an Alberta separation referendum are hitting communities, fueling a fresh debate about the province's future in Canada. Here's CTV's Kathy Lee.
People in Alberta's biggest city waiting to add their names to a conversation about the province's future.
Alberta would be better off if we separated from the rest of Canada.
Separatist sentiment gaining traction recently as the group Stay Free Alberta gathers signatures for a referendum on the province leaving the country. Supporters say they've been on the losing end of federal policy.
Continually giving to the have-not provinces and never having pipelines, just always giving.
Just under 178,000 signatures need to be collected by May 2nd before the question can move forward.
We're well on our way to the 1 million signature goal that we set for this campaign.
Despite their optimism, there are obstacles. Several First Nations groups have launched legal action against the petition, and some political leaders are pushing back on the idea that separation reflects the majority view.
Albertans are proud Canadians. Always have been, always will be.
A recent Ipsos polling appears to support that perspective, showing most Albertans oppose separation. About a third want it, mirroring sentiment seen in Quebec, all as that province's debate around sovereignty reignites as Ottawa calls for unity.
I don't think either referendum will pass, but that's a lot of energy being focused on national unity at the time that we're dealing with major threats coming from the United States.
But there's little interest here in becoming a U.S. state because they say this is about independence. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Canada's largest school board will be open tomorrow after being closed today for a record-breaking storm. Here's CTV's John Vanavalley Rao on which records were smashed.
In downtown Toronto, this was the scene many drivers woke up to, warned to stay off the streets, a directive that wasn't hard to follow because just getting to a main road required a lot of shoveling.
For Toronto, it's shocking, to be honest.
In a city once ridiculed for calling in the army to help clear snow, this was, by any standard, a lot to cope with, smashing records that go back more than 80 years.
It was crazy. Like, we haven't had storms like that in a long time.
In some parts of downtown Toronto, 56 centimeters fell, with the city by far getting the worst of the snow, fueled by its proximity to Lake Ontario and the wind direction.
I don't think I've ever recalled a storm that where the heaviest amount of snow was in Toronto when a storm hit the entire province, like from Windsor to Ottawa.
A storm that closed schools with kids getting a snow day and residents asked to stay home if they could. In Kitchener, so much snow was piled up on the side of an overpass. It acted like a ramp, which a pair of cars hit and launched over, one of them flipping and landing on the ground below, killing the driver. At Pearson Airport, where they also got walloped by record snow, airlines were in recovery mode after hundreds of flights were canceled on Sunday, and there were plenty more delays today.
I understand it's the weather, and safety comes first.
A storm that moved into Quebec and onto the Maritimes, where as much as 35 centimeters of snow was expected to fall in Nova Scotia. And in many parts of the Maritimes, schools were also closed. At Halifax's airport, dozens of flights were canceled. As for Toronto, this is now the snowiest January on record, triple the average amount, and there's still 5 days left in the month. John Benavelli-Rouse, CTV News, Toronto.
And with us now is CTV Atlantic meteorologist Kaylin Mitchell. Kaylin, a massive blast of winter, unprecedented by some standards. Walk us through some of the science behind the system and why Toronto got hit so hard.
Thank you, Omar. Well, Toronto was already in a good spot to pick up heavy snow from this system. On the northern side of it, where there's a great combination of moisture, lift, and cold air in place. Then, near the end of the storm, there was one final band of very heavy snow that made its way out of the U.S. Midwest that was enhanced over Lake Erie, almost like a lake effect snow squall situation combined with the system snowfall in a bullseye right in around the Toronto area. Additionally, the cold air in place ahead of the snow made for the perfect type of conditions to get a fluffier, powder-type snow to fall that really added up to more depth once it was down on the ground. If you melted that 60 centimeters of snow down, you got about less than half of what you would expect if the snow was kind of the more typical variety. Now, what's left of the weather system continues to make its way through Atlantic Canada, where it may bring an additional 5 to 15 centimeters of snow tonight into tomorrow. Omar.
All right, Kaylin, thank you. Investigators are trying to determine if weather was a factor in a fatal plane crash in Maine.
Aircraft upside down. We have a passenger aircraft upside down.
All 6 people on board were killed when the Bombardier Challenger business jet flipped over and burned on takeoff. The disaster happened around 7:45 Sunday night as a massive winter storm was beginning to reach the area. The identities of the victims have not been released. Ryan Wedding has pleaded not guilty to running a billion-dollar drug trafficking ring and orchestrating multiple killings. The former Canadian Olympic snowboarder was arrested last week in Mexico City. A trial date has been set for March 24th, and if he's convicted of the most serious charges, he could get life in prison. The 44-year-old also faces separate drug charges in Canada dating back to 2015. And a building owned by a Canadian company run by Canadian businessman Jim Pattison could soon be housing U.S. immigration detainees. The Department of Homeland Security says it will buy the massive warehouse in Virginia to use as a, quote, processing facility for immigration and customs enforcement, or ICE. Planned renovations include a detention area and a guard shack. The building owners are not commenting. America's top border official is expected to leave Minneapolis, where ICE agents shot and killed a second resident this month. CTV's Adrian Gobriel on who's taking over and the tension in the streets.
With smoke bombs igniting an already explosive, deadly weekend in Minneapolis, the White House held its first press briefing today following the killing of Alex Preddy on Saturday.
The president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York and, yes, Minneapolis.
With word tonight that top Border Patrol official Gregory Bovine and some of his agents are expected to leave Minneapolis tomorrow, Border Czar Thomas Homan has arrived in the city. to take over ICE operations.
To continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials.
On Saturday, 37-year-old Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse, was shot and killed by U.S. federal agents. Video shows one of the officers removing a gun that Preddy was believed to be concealing during an anti-ICE protest. Then at least 10 shots can be heard. The Department of Homeland Security has said that agents fired in self-defense.
This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage.
His family say Preddy had a license to carry and conceal. At no time is he seen holding a gun. The only item in his hand, a cell phone.
There are investigations into what took place on Saturday.
On his Truth Social page, President Donald Trump shared that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has reached out and requested they work together. The two seem to be on a similar wavelength. The White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt blaming Walz and other Democrats today in the state of Minnesota for the killing of 2 civilians by federal agents.
Elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers.
According to the White House, President Trump is said to be open to reducing the number of agents on the streets of Minneapolis-St. Paul's, but only if a list of demands are met, including all illegal aliens in state prisons be handed over to federal officials. Adrian Gobriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Israel has recovered the remains of the last hostage in Gaza, which was a key condition in the plan to end the war. Dozens of Israeli soldiers sang at the site in Gaza where the body of the hostage was found. He was a police officer who was killed in the October 7th attacks. His father met the coffin after it crossed into southern Israel with members of his police unit escorting his remains to his hometown. Israel has said it would reopen the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza after all of the hostages, living and dead, had been returned. Coming up.
It's critical that we not only monitor, but that we innovate.
How climate change is creating both risk and opportunity in Canada's far north. The federal government says climate change is the #1 threat to Canada's security in the Arctic and the people who live there. CTV's Heather Wright is in the far north to find out what's at stake.
The barrels are underneath, you can't see them.
This is home for Darren Boutillier.
Come on, let's go.
He lives in one of about 30 houses on Great Slave Lake in Yellowknife, which float in the summer and sit on the ice during the winter. And over the last several years, he's seen firsthand the impacts of climate change in the north.
We've had so much less rain in the last few years. The lake has actually dropped anywhere from 4 to 6 feet.
The Arctic is warming faster than any other part of the planet, causing dramatic sea ice loss, thawing permafrost, and more extreme weather.
We're standing on an ice road. Many areas here in the north rely on these types of roads to get access to communities. But with climate change, the seasons are getting shorter. So it takes longer to get back home, and more supplies have to be flown in, which is expensive.
According to Canada's Arctic Foreign Policy, climate change is considered the most pressing threat to Canada's security in the Arctic and the people who live here. Climate change is expected to further intensify geopolitical competition by opening up shipping routes and creating more access to resource development.
The biggest thing is the disappearance of the ice, which will generate increased harvesting of natural resources in the north, as well as maritime traffic.
Experts say more surveillance is needed, not only from a military perspective, but in monitoring environmental changes as well.
If we have a strong knowledge base, we're in a position of strength, and that creates resilience and strength and security within our infrastructure corridors and for our northern communities.
Steve Coquel is a permafrost scientist and says a change in climate will also require changes to how infrastructure is built.
It's critical that we not only monitor, but that we innovate.
While a warming Arctic will provide economic opportunity, it will also disrupt the delicate ecosystem and the people who live here, with advocates saying there must be strict environmental protections as well. Omar.
Heather Wright in Yellowknife tonight. Heather, thank you. Still ahead. What may have caused this hotel roof to collapse? A group of belugas belonging to a closed Canadian theme park may be headed south. The federal government has given Marineland conditional approval to export 30 belugas and 4 dolphins after the site said it required an urgent rescue solution to keep them alive. The park has reportedly been in discussions with several locations in the United States. And stunning video of a roof collapse at a hotel outside Oklahoma City. No one was hurt as water gushed from the ceiling. Frozen pipes are believed to have burst, causing the mess. Still ahead, how a made-in-Canada product got a big assist from a hit TV show. The two co-stars of the hit series Heated Rivalry on Crave, a subsidiary of Bell Media, which also owns CTV, traded in their skates for torches. Hudson Williams and Connor Story participated in the Olympic torch relay in Italy Sunday. And Heated Rivalry is stoking demand in a Canadian product promoting equality and inclusion on the ice. Here's CTV's Nicole Lampa.
Chris Wells and Jeff McLean opened the door a decade ago, introducing hockey to rolls of rainbow-colored tape.
Pride tape came out of a research question I had 10 years ago was why are young gay male and bisexual boys dropping out of organized team sports at much younger ages than their heterosexual cisgender peers?
The Edmonton Oilers were the first in the NHL to support the initiative. Soon after, the rest in the league asked for rolls. Then Pride Tape's makers had to stick-handle the NHL's short-lived attempt to ban it 2 years ago and briefly saw a jump in sales. Now they've scored in the international market, with orders coming in at an unprecedented level. Thanks to the worldwide success of Heated Rivalry, a fictional Canadian gay romance show about star hockey players.
We've actually been seeing sales follow the trend of where the show is going. We're seeing more tape being sold at a time, and we're seeing it more globally.
They say sales are up 40%, recently receiving 3 bulk orders from Germany and sending boxes to UK's Elite Ice Hockey League for Pride Week.
We see a lot of players using it in warm-up, and then a lot of teams will also tape the top of the goalie stick and use that in the game as well. So we're hoping to see it used a lot.
The makers of Pride Tape are also hoping to see it used in the hit show.
We're in conversation with the folks at Crave about partnerships. Who knows, maybe in season 2, Pride Tape might make its debut in an episode.
The pair also hope the mission they set out on 10 years ago doesn't go away.
Despite having Pride Tape, we still don't have an NHL athlete, player, present or even in the past that has come out.
Nicole Lampa, CTV News, Edmonton.
And that's a snapshot of this Monday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.